Finally had a chance this week to sit down recording a new video, and it's going to be on our lovely topic regarding difficulty in game design. With all the discussions going around with it, it's time to, I guess, piss everybody off on this topic. This whole debate kind of got kicked off by a recent interview with Hideo Kojima discussing Death Stranding. Two names I'm sure nobody's ever heard of for our channel here. But in the interview, he talked about having a very easy or quote-unquote movie mode for Death Stranding, and saying this was designed for anyone and everyone to be able to beat the game regardless of their skill level, learning the mechanics. You get the picture. And of course, this has sparked the ever-popular debates on both sides. People saying every game would be better if it had a very easy mode. No, the game, it's all about the difficulty, you need to get good scrub, and it just goes around in a circle and so on and so forth. And for our video for today, I'm going to piss everybody off by saying that both sides are wrong in this regard. In a recent piece I made on Medium and over on Gamasutra, we talked about the differences between playability and accessibility. Accessibility being elements that, from the outside, prevent somebody from playing a game. Subtitles, colorblind, being accessible around controller rebinding, and many more. And playability being elements that allow people to experience or get involved with your core gameplay loop. And in that piece, I said that difficulty is not a part of playability. It's also not really a part of accessibility either. And this is a common issue that a lot of people tend to have trouble, I guess, squaring the circle on. That they will automatically assume that difficulty in of itself is bad for these games, and that if we make every game easier, surely it would make them better. The problem, as we have learned and we got some examples to go over, is that difficulty by itself is not the cure-all solution. And as fans of game wisdom know, I don't like difficulty settings in games. I feel it is a crutch. It's often used as a crutch by designers to avoid playability concerns or balance. That a lot of people will say, this game is perfect because it has a super easy mode, or we don't care about balance for, the super hard difficulty because it's meant for the masochist, so why should we need to play, test, and balance that? And this is something that we've seen many times in the past. In Diablo 3, for instance, the very first version of that game was very much panned by a lot of people for being difficult for the wrong reasons. And Blizzard even said that for the ultimate difficulty, nobody on the team could play it. There was very little actual playtesting done at that level. That's not good. Now, the other point is that when it comes to difficulty settings in games, they can often be used to mask or hide certain issues with the gameplay. Again, a lot of people will say that they won't need to review a game or look at it critically if it has a casual setting, because everyone can play on that setting. And the problem with that is that, again, if you're not playing the game at the level that it was intended for, or even seeing how far the designers can go, then you're not really being able to examine how the design, the structure of the game works. And our case in point is that lovely little game in the corner there. That is, of course, God of War 2018, a game that was critically, commercially, and everybody basically praised it. So many people talked about the storytelling, how they loved Christopher Judge, the amazing story, they cried at it, they loved the axe physics and all that. Very few people talked about the design issues from a moment-to-moment and progression standpoint. And the reason is very simple. If you play the game on either the casual or normal difficulties, you don't really get to see those issues in play. I played it on Gimme God of War, and yes, I got to experience it all, again and again and again, 6 hours of fighting that boss, and again and again. And the point is, if you're not playing the game at a level that was intended, or at the level that's considered the baseline experience, and keep that more in the back of your mind, we'll come back to that in a minute, then you're not really able to give the game a fair review. And I do think that if we do have more games with difficulty settings going forward, the reviewer should say what difficulty they're playing it at, because this can lead to vastly different experiences. On the other end of the spectrum, we could talk about something like Xcom and Xcom 2 by Firaxis. That the game kind of loses some of the charm of the Xcom gameplay loop when you play the game at the highest difficulty. Anyone who's played either one of those games at legend difficulty knows that if you lose the very first mission, or even the basic like starter mission, you lose a character, it is better just to restart your entire game, because you are falling behind and you may not be able to catch up. And that is different from the original XCOM that basically said you're going to lose, but you can eventually get through that. And to talk about why that is a case of XCOM is way beyond the scope of this video. But, as I said a minute ago, an important concept when it comes to difficulty, and one that we could probably spend a video in of itself on, is the idea of a baseline. The baseline experience of the game is the absolute bare minimum required by the player in order to beat it. Whether it is being able to simply run and jump over a gap, properly timing button presses when you're fighting a boss, doing whatever the crazy maneuvers are called in a Kaizo game, and you get the picture. If the player cannot or does not have the skill to get to that baseline, they are not going to be able to beat the game or really experience it. If you want to play a game, if you want to play a platformer and you're not good at jumping, or you can't improve at jumping, there's not much you can really do at that point. But with that said though, a baseline for any video game should always be as low as reasonably possible by the design. And there are better ways to instill difficulty and challenge beyond just having a very hard difficulty curve. And when we get to our example in the back half of the video, we'll talk more about that then. But the problem when it comes to talking about difficulty in video games is that many people don't really understand what that means from a design standpoint. And the people who say that every video game can be improved by having a very easy mode are just as wrong as the people who say that difficulty is a part of the game experience. And yeah, I just pretty much pissed off everybody on Twitter with that sentence. But when we're talking about good design and / very playable games, they are meant to be experienced by everyone. Somebody who is a novice or a super hardcore player can get an experience out of this game. They can experience the core gameplay loop and be able to play the title. Now obviously with that said, you can have ways of adjusting things and making it easier or harder that we'll come back to. But the problem is that difficulty in of itself does not drive playability or accessibility. And like I said a few minutes ago, it is often used as a crutch to ignore these issues. For people who say that the Dark Souls series is good because it's hard, that's not right. And again, we don't have the time to have a deep dive into Dark Souls right now. But the problem for people who say that every game can be improved by having an easy mode is that difficulty is subjective in a lot of cases. What somebody finds easy, somebody else may find brutally difficult, and vice versa. This again is the case in point about having a very low baseline. You want your game to be as easy to get into as possible, and then you can allow the player to decide how much to ratchet things up and go from there. Excuse me. But if you just say every game should be easy, what does that mean? Just as every game is different in terms of its audience, so is everything is different from what kind of skill or understanding is required. Oh, excuse me, my allergies are really bothering me. Making a puzzle game easier is a fundamentally different experience than making a platformer easier, or an RTS, or an action game, and so on and so forth. And again, it's very easy from a design standpoint to overbalance a game to make it easy or hard. If I have a game where I have 100 points of health and an enemy does 10 points per hit, I could make that game easier by saying now the enemy only does 1 point of damage per hit. I could make it harder by saying the enemy now does 400 points of damage per hit. And no, that's not a joke. There have been games that have super overtuned the difficulty like that, such as Nier and Nier Automata. And again, if all you're doing is looking at the difficulty of the game, then you are not understanding where and why people are having trouble learning or getting into it. Somebody on one of the many Twitter feuds that's going on right now said this about a game. They said that I need to have an easy mode in this game because the tutorial didn't explain everything to me and I didn't know how to play the game. Now, chances are, I hope those of you watching this understand the major fallacy in that statement. But the answer is that what that person was describing is not a difficulty complaint about a game, it is a playability complaint. We've talked about onboarding and the importance of building a game that allows people to get into it and learn it. And like I said a few minutes ago, saying that a game is great because it's difficult misses the point about what makes these games work. There's a difference between a deep game and a difficult one. And again, difficulty by itself is not going to pull or repel people from a title. It's how the game presents itself that will ultimately do that. And for my case in point, I want to talk briefly about Mass Effect. Raise your hand, even though I can't see you right now, if you beat Mass Effect. I don't care if you beat it on the easiest setting, I don't care if you beat it on the super hard setting. Well, that's great, because guess what? I played the game for about an hour, got fed up with it, and I stopped playing it. Mass Effect just did not work for me. And the issues with it wasn't that it wasn't too hard or wasn't too easy. It was that I just did not get into that gameplay loop. For somebody like me, it did not do a good enough job to get me invested in that gameplay. And again, that is the key point for today. That at the end of the day, if your game is not playable, it doesn't matter what your difficulty settings are, it's not going to attract people to it. And again, this is why the very best games focus on playability first, getting their baseline right, and then expanding or contracting things from there. Now, normally this will be the part where I say we're going to do a quick shout-out break, and then we're going to get to our other game footage. But I have one other little sightseeing tour we have to go on first. Alright, before we move on to our next footage, there's one last thing I want to show. That up there in the corner is the game Action Henk. It is a challenging, physics-guided kind of platformer slash racer. And we played this game, I think, a few years ago. And the title itself is designed to be hard as you're racing these various ghosts in terms of getting the best time and earning the medals. But what the developers did was design the game around multiple difficulty settings based on the ghosts that you use. So a bronze ghost challenge would be easier than a silver or a gold, and you get the picture. But how they did was they replayed the game essentially 4 or 5 different times, making use of or ignoring certain elements or mechanics to get essentially these times right. So the bronze ghost would basically be making constant mistakes and wouldn't be optimized all that well. And they did this for every level in the game. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that this is one of the reasons why good balance or playability in games is very hard to achieve. It's not something that can be just done by adjusting stats. And for a lot of people, they don't quite get what it means to make a game easier or harder. Everyone says we need to make Sekiro more accessible. But what does that mean exactly in terms of making the game more playable? I can think of several examples that I don't think anyone else has covered before. But again, in order to make a game work, it needs to be playable for people of all skill levels. And if you're just relying on difficulty settings to kind of do the job for you, then that's not really helping anyone in that regard. But with that said, it's time for that Patreon supporter and sponsor shoutout, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a game that I think does the best in terms of having the best of both worlds. And now for a quick thank you to our current Game Wisdom sponsors and Patreon supporters. And if you'd like to continue the discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. Alright, so our next example is of the game Bastion, which I am sure nobody here once again has ever heard of before. But this was the freshman outing by Supergiant Games, and was again another critical and commercial success. People praise it for its storytelling, the use of the narrator as a framing device, and its gameplay and music, which I'm sure you're probably wondering why you're not hearing that right now. But one of the areas that was very fascinating about Bastion and what it did was how it handled difficulty. At the base level of this game, once again the baseline experience, Bastion is an easy game. I wouldn't say it's, mind-numbingly easy, but without doing anything to the difficulty, you can kind of like button mash your way through the main challenges and see everything there is in the title. And that was designed for. Developers had it like that. So instead of forcing players to play it harder or punish them, they use their system here. They use kind of like a choose your own difficulty system for Bastion to allow players who want the game to be harder to play it like that, and in a way could also be rewarded or have more things to do because of it. How it worked was after a certain point in the early game, you would unlock, I think it was like a shrine or like a temple, where you can activate, I believe it was up to 8 different totems. Each totem would affect the difficulty of the game in some way, shape, or form. It wasn't just saying, put totem on, enemies gain 10% more health or do 5% more damage. It would modify the enemies and how they would respond, forcing you to adapt to these changes. Over the course of like the last minute or so of you watching this video, you probably have seen some things come up just like that. For instance, when an enemy dies, they will drop a little bomb, like right there on death, basically forcing you to dodge or plan around that. There's also the chance for enemies to reflect projectile attacks that we saw a few minutes ago and may show up again during this part. And that's just a few of the examples. And playing Bastion on the easiest setting and playing it on the quote-unquote hardest by having all 8 totems on are 2 completely different experiences. Oh, you just saw the reflect right there. And what the game did was, or what the developers did was that they balanced the game around any number of these combinations of totems. Again, you can play this game with 0 totems, 2 totems, 4, all 8, and you are still getting an experience of this title. What they did to incentivize people, or give it more of an incentive, was that the more totems you put on, the faster you would gain experience. So speedrunners would probably play the game on the harder settings at the right point to maximize their own experience through the game, thereby leveling up and growing more in power faster. And this, I think, has always been a smart move when it comes to this kind of talk about playability and difficulty. That player-controlled difficulty is one of the best things you can do to have your cake and eat it too. If somebody wants the game to be harder, give them the option to do so and reward them. Likewise, if they want the game to be easier, let them do that, or have the baseline be easy, but do not essentially punish them for doing so. Again, you want your baseline to be as the easiest way or the easiest form possible of your design. And what I was thinking with Bastion is, what if we could go the other way? Turn on totems or have options that would make certain aspects of the game easier, and let's say, just for the heck of it, that there is no penalty for doing that. Again, you don't want to punish somebody for saying that your game is too hard. I know, again, with the infamous jokes that id throws in, I'm a baby, please hurt me, total carnage, etc., etc. But it's good to let the player decide how hard or how easy they want to play the game. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. Did I just describe difficulty settings? And the answer to that is no, not in a traditional sense. Again, when most people think about difficulty in games, they only think about things from a stat or abstracted point of view. And that doesn't answer the question about why somebody may find a game harder or easier. Going back to games like Sekiro, Dark Souls, and the like, that basically if you were to just adjust all the stats down on enemies, that would not make the game more playable. But what if we had an option or an item that could slow down enemy attacks, or provide an on-screen prompt for when an enemy was about to parry, or make it a lot easier to do that? Those elements would help players, and would still allow to preserve the gameplay, and again, you would not be rewarded or penalized for doing so. And like I said in the last part, the very best games strive to have one balanced experience and then allow players to customize or switch things around from there. The World Ends With You. Sorry about that. It was one of my favorite games for the very fact that you could play that game on either absolute easy or very hard, and you would get an experience tailored to you. And the game would allow for different things to happen based on the difficulty that you were playing at. But again, it is the player's choice that they can make at any time to decide how hard or how easy they want to make it. And just having a setting at the beginning and adjusting stats is not enough, in my opinion. And again, it doesn't really help if the game isn't playable. Even with something like The World Ends With You, to be fair, that with the difficulty settings, it was still a hard game for new players to grasp. The very original control scheme could also be a nightmare, and they did do things to make it easier for people to play, allowing the AI to take control or make the top screen work easier or simpler to play. And again, this raises the final point for our video. There is no catch-all to difficulty. Every game is different in its design and with regards to what is going to challenge or make a game harder to play. And you never want a game to be hard to play. You want to look at your title and see where are elements people are having trouble understanding and try to improve them. And if you can't adjust things for everybody, then give the option for the player to make those adjustments themselves, as with The World Ends With You or with Bastion here. So, to wrap up this video, what I want to ask you guys is, can you think of games that did a great job of player-controlled difficulty? And before anyone says it, I know somebody will be bringing up Diablo. And Diablo 3 with its adventure mode is another great example of this. But again, it did not begin that way. The ability to let the player control how hard they want to make the game and get rewarded accordingly, that didn't occur until I believe patch 1.04 or the Reaper of Souls expansion. But if you have any other examples, let me know. Thanks again for watching this video. Hopefully I won't get too many angry comments down below. And come on back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where is in the art and science of games. Until next time, have a great night. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel linked down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.